It's hard to characterize Sidney's career because he did so much so fast. Like most directors, he was great when he had a great script. What he's great at was melodrama with character. I think a lot of that came out of the Yiddish theater, which specialized in melodrama and a lot of geschraying and two people in a room yelling at each other.
Perhaps you'd like to pull the switch.
For this kid, you bet I would.
I feel sorry for you. What it must feel like to want to pull the switch. Ever since you walked into this room, you've been acting like a self-appointed public avenger. You want to see this boy die because you personally want it, not because of the facts. You're a sadist.
Kill him out!
He liked working with actors, and he liked when he could get situations in which the actors could go at each other. That was what he came out of, and that's what he liked doing and was good at. 12 Angry Men was a very good first movie for him to do because all those years of television of working in a small space, worked for him. He was at home doing it, and it worked. I had been doing some work on a CBS half-hour show called Danger, and the director was Yul Brynner, and Sidney was his assistant. And Yul left reluctantly to do this musical that he didn't have any particular hopes for, and which turned out to be The King and I, and Sidney took his place. At first, the relationship was just professional, and then we gradually became friends. He came out of the Depression and the New Deal, and those were the things that formed us, formed our politics, and formed the way we looked at the world. I was blacklisted. I wasn't blacklisted by accident. It wasn't a mistake that was made. I was blacklisted for very specific political beliefs and actions. At the beginning, it was tough. It really wasn't until I met Sidney and Charlie Russell. They knew I was blacklisted. At first, I used a pseudonym on Danger, and then the executives, figured the writers were a sneaky bunch and probably using pseudonyms, and they demanded a real person that they could see and have meetings with. So then it became a process of finding fronts who could do that, whom you could trust to go into a meeting and make some sense. And one of them, I know, a very nice man, but not a writer, and not. I remember writing notes on his sleeve for him to consult when he went into an executive meeting. But it was due to Sidney, really, that I worked in that time. Did I feel the need to write political content? Social content, not necessarily overtly political. Yes, that was kind of, the side of the street I worked. That's what interested me, really. I felt people are formed by politics, and they get into trouble because of politics. And it was worth writing about. We weren't just working, we were doing our job. I think we never felt that. Sidney and I both always wanted, at least in the larger works, to do things that had some meaning. Because of the lack of technology on our part, there was very little you could do. We didn't have the resources that they had now. And so in a sense, we were forced back on character. We had to write things about character. And as a result, there were a lot of very, very good things done. You Are There was a very happy circumstance for us. And it was written, almost all of it, by 3 blacklisted writers of a particular political bent. Myself, Abraham Polanski, and Arnold Manoff. And we wrote them under different names, which you had to have. And it really wasn't that we went looking for liberal themes or radical themes. What we were able to do was to find an historical situation that had a conflict in it, basically, that made the drama. Charlie Russell, the producer, would kind of vet these scripts with history professors at Columbia or NYU. We were very careful not to have the show seem slanted in that sense, except in the sense that we looked at history being slanted in our direction sometimes, not always. If we did the Salem witch trials at the same time as the McCarthy period, it wasn't unconscious. It was very courageous what both Sidney and Charlie did. They weren't as political as the blacklisted writers were. They were doing it because they felt that what was happening was bad, and also because I think they were getting good material, which was very usable and important to them. And there were occasions when Sidney and I would talk, and I would say, listen, you be careful about what you're doing. I mean, we'll survive. Don't worry about us, and one way or the other. And he would say, no, this is fine. Fuck him. Took a lot of guts to do what he was doing. We knew that he was going to have a big career, and we worried about him and for him. He was doing something very good for us, and we didn't want him, and also Charlie, whom we were very fond of, to get into trouble. But it didn't happen, fortunately. Sidney was responsible for getting my first job after the blacklist. He was going to do a film for Carlo Ponti, starring Sophia Loren, his wife, and they needed a writer. And Sidney recommended me. And in the middle of writing the script, the House Committee on Un-American Activities held a session in New York. And the agent called and said, Paramount called and they're not doing the deal. There's a subpoena out for you. And I said, oh, thank you very much. And I packed my bag and went on the lam. We had a meeting with Ponti and an interpreter. He didn't speak English very well then. And I brought my lawyer. And my lawyer explained my position, which was that I was not going to go testify and give names. And Ponti listened, and then he rattled off a long stream of Italian. And the interpreter turned to us and said, Mr. Ponti would like to know who has to be fixed and for how much. It ended okay for me, and I continued to work for Ponti. Sidney had made it possible. In the movie business, what the people in power are saying to the talent is, how far can we push you? What's your bottom line? And I think Sidney had that. I know that he had offers of big jobs that he wouldn't take because they violated something in him that he felt he couldn't do. He had a bottom line. I mean, he stood for something. Even though he and I might argue politically about certain issues or something like that, I knew that he was coming from some place that was important to him, that meant something, and that he wouldn't see violated.